Gynecologists of Reddit. What's the worst thing you've seen? Most awkward experience?
My first pap, it was this old lady. I was so nervous, and she knew it. And all she said to me was, "I'm so glad I'm not one of those male doctors. Their hands are like big oily sausages." And then proceeded to check my insides with her small grandma fingers.
Not a gynecologic experience, since I have no gyn. But I have a similar tale. Involving my tail, I went to see a colorectal surgeon, part of a university hospital system. He asks I'm okay with someone B was training joining in. I said, no problem, folks gotta learn. Foot in the door, finger in the orifice. In comes this smoking hot young woman, about my age then. She introduces herself and voila. Turns out she has an Australian accent. Instant 40% increase in attractiveness. So, I'm bent over this exam table, ass blade, bright lights shining into my nethers, and they are making small talk with me. Ask what I do, and I say, I'm in grad school, public health. Q sexy, trainee Australian, oh my god, so am I. Turns out, she was in the same international public health policy program I was in. After all was said, poked, prodded, and done. I get to wipe lube out of my ass with a paper towel as she readies to depart and says, hey, I'll see you around. Maybe we'll have a class together. Fuck me. I never saw her again. My sister's boyfriend was doing a gyno rotation. He was quite upset, as he was examining a woman that from sight and smell alone, it was obvious. She had cervical cancer so advanced that she wasn't going to make it. For the first time on that rotation, he had to warn someone about their imminent death. It was all very depressing and solemn. So it was quite a relief when it turned out to be a tampon that had been in there long enough to resemble a tumor. On TSS, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but as I understand it, the bacteria that causes TSS is either present in a patient or not. Like Mr. SS, TSS is not an inevitable consequence of disgusting tampon behavior. One that a colleague in OB/GYN shared a while back. A woman was in for a pelvic exam, is up in the stirrups, and my colleague has her fingers in up to the cervix. At this point, something possesses the woman to ask, and I quote, "So, do you ever think about stuffing a turkey while you're doing this?" My colleague, trying to keep a straight face, answers, "No, but now I will every Thanksgiving." The woman finds this hilarious, and proceeds to stare my colleague dead in the eye, while yelling gobble 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 gobble. With my colleague's hands still up her hoodie-hoo. I still enjoy telling that story to friends at Thanksgiving. It means more turkey, for more.
Super late to the thread here. Not an OB or GYN different specialty, but I've done my share of vaginal exams. I once admitted a 300+ pound mentally handicapped woman to the hospital for some non-GYN issue. However, she had what I suspected to be a raging case of bacterial vaginosis because her whole room smelled like rotten zombie vagina. It was so bad the nurses moved her to a single room and put a fan in her room to move some air. Unfortunately, this meant that I would, at some point, have to do a pelvic exam. I put it off the first day, which turned out to be a mistake. The following day I showed up to check things out. The nurses informed me that her handicapped boyfriend had been in the room all day with the door shut. I walked in before the exam and the room was literally saturated with the smell of vaginosis. It was so thick in the air I swear it was precipitating on my skin. I get her all positioned and have my med students hold her thighs open for me. Yes, hold her thigh fat out of the way. I go in with the speculum. Her vaginal walls are collapsing around the sides of the speculum because of her size, making visualization difficult. She has an abhorrent amount of vaginal discharge, which was probably from her BV. At this point I'm breathing through my mouth, because I know if I so much as sniffle I'll probably gag. The med students are looking away with a look of horror on their face, obviously having made the rookie mistake of breathing through their nose. In addition to her vaginal discharge, however, I notice what is very clearly semen. To this day I still see her semen-filled infected vagina when I close my eyes.
My aunt is a gynecologist, and she very awkwardly lectured me after a recent client had visited. Apparently, this girl and her boyfriend decided to get creative. So they used tuna and milk to, excuse me, eat her out. The girl kept getting random orgasms in class and went to find out she had maggots. So gross. Just a tip.
Nurse here. I had a girl come into the ER walking funny. She was complaining of pain near her vagina. She had an ingrown pubic hair next to her vagina that was infected and created a 4 centimeters lesion of pus and stench. The paw and I had to drain the vesicle. I think I screamed louder than her when it popped while the paw was injecting some lidocaine to numb the area. It's sad. With no insurance, the poor girl let it go for so long before she spent the money for a doctor.
Surgeon here. I was doing a pediatric surgical rotation when an 8-year-old girl was brought in by her parents in ER for vaginal bleeding. I was called in to have a look at her because the nurse could see something inside. Yep, there was stuff inside, and lots of it. Pencils. She used to pleasure herself with pencils, took her to theater, and removed more than 20 pencils from her. Scarred for life. Can never look at pencils without remembering that.
I'm on placement as a scrub nurse for a giant theater. I've seen many gross things in my time here. Mostly it's been terrible smells and a whole load of prolapses, but one case really sticks in my mind. This poor woman came in with cervical cancer, and she got treated for it with chemo. For some reason I don't know the medical technicalities behind this, her rectum and vagina fused, and any bowel movement she had would erupt furiously out of her vag. She was also very overweight, so couldn't properly clean herself, meaning all the festering shit and general uncleanliness had caused everything down there to start rotting. This is a story from a friend's dad. Happened 3 summers ago. An overweight woman comes into the office for an STD test and pelvic exam, complaining of colorful discharge, an awful stench, and burning during urination. She assumes she has gonorrhea. Wrong. It was much worse. He gets in there for the pelvic exam, all the while assaulted by the stench of rot, and finds a dead frog in her vagina. This thing is heavily decomposed, since the warmth of the woman's vaginal cavity has helped to speed up the process, and he has to pull it out piece by piece. Needless to say, she also had a wicked UTI. The woman explained that she'd passed out naked and drunk or high or whatever at some party at her boyfriend's house, and figures he or one of his friends must have thought it would be an absolute riot to put a live fucking frog up her vag. She apparently did not seem bothered by the fact that an animal had died and decomposed in her vagina, just relieved she didn't have gonorrhea. Edit. For extra gross out factor, it's worth knowing that this was in Memphis, TN, where temperatures routinely get well over 10°F with over 90% humidity. Think about that.
What stories have you had with gynecologists? Tell us in the comments, and maybe you will be the hero of our next video.